Thank you for tuning in to Say Hi to the Future's Leadership Forum, a space where you will hear perspectives from global industry executives on human ingenuity, how they catalyze it to unlock value and realize their organization's true potential. We will keep it real. You will hear what's worked well and learnings from instances where things could have worked better. I am your host, Saquib Vali, partner at Spiderworks, and explorers say hi to the future, the fast-growing community highlighting the human side of ingenuity. Our guest today is Craig McLellan, CEO of ThinkOn, a cloud solution provider with global data center footprint. ThinkOn has grown 35% annually over the past 3 years and well poised to continue that trajectory through both organic as well as acquisitions. ThinkOn just turned 10. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Craig is the CEO, and Craig is also a CEO member of the Canadian Council of Innovators. Welcome, Craig, and thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for the time, and I always enjoy these conversations.
Craig, you know what? I just gave the introduction that one reads somewhere. But you know what? I'm sure it'll be so much better because one of the things I read was you stand to simplify. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself in your words and let our listeners in on who Craig McLellan really is?
Sure, I'd love to. So when I started the business, my number one objective was to A, focus on data, and B, to leverage organizations that already had sales forces where they were looking for high quality products to sell. And to me, high quality, one of the key attributes of being high quality is being simple and easy to understand. So from the very first days of the business, we really focused on ensuring that our value proposition was straightforward, meaning protect data, make data accessible, make data useful, all in the context of cloud-oriented services because people wanted to pay for consumption as opposed to tying up a lot of capital. So it allowed us to really focus on a clear message. And to give you an idea of how important that was to us, for the first 5 years of the business, our entire portfolio of services was 14 SKUs. Our competition were thousands of SKUs, but we built our model in such a way that our partners could, get their heads around what we were doing easily. And I think fast forward to today, it still holds true. Our best relationships are with partners who they know the outcomes that their customers want, and they focus on taking our packaging of those outcomes and turning it into revenue for them and a great value for their customers. But every time we try to get complicated or sophisticated, things start to feel unnatural for us, and we start to lose sight of the fact that simplicity was what really was our first motivator.
And that's such a cool thing to say. And Craig, whether now or at some other point in time, I'd love to get your take on what you thought about the Apple Vision Pro. Talk about simplifying things. It's expensive, I get it. It's not for you and me right now, I get it. But still, the simplicity with which they went ahead and presented something was just unbelievable.
I think if you want to drive adoption that's meaningful and lasting, the only way to do that, especially if you want to get beyond early adopters, is you have to focus on something that's simple and consumable and relatable. All three of those words, I think, are all key. And Apple's been a master of that for a very long time. Very inspirational, to take your lead from what they're doing, because at the end of the day, our customers, like their customers and other organizations who embrace similar thoughts, it really is tied to, can the consumer understand the outcome that you're offering and relate it to the problem they're experiencing?
Correct. We met through Chris, and then from there on, we've had a few more intersects. I mean, your association with the CCI, ThinkOn's partnership with Cantor, which is something at some point in time I'd love to get into. But the current spurt of AI and what that means for the cloud, that's sort of a macro trend right now. And then what that means for business, etc. That, given all of that as context, help our listeners understand a bit more of what ThinkOn does, right? And as you do, please do use this platform for all of us to demystify what we as people might get wrong about either ThinkOn, its services, its clients, or frankly, what do we get wrong about cloud in general?
Okay, well, let's take that in reverse order. I think
Sure.
that there are organizations globally who have spent quite a bit of time merchandising the idea of cloud and intentionally make it seem something that it is not. Fundamentally, it's the same thing people have had forever. It's just sitting in some other place with
That's right.
the benefits of a consumption model. So if you're an enterprise organization and you've been struggling with your IT department for 5 years, like you go back in time, say 5 years or 10 years, and you're a CIO of a large enterprise, and all you hear are people complaining about how slow things are, how hard it is to get something. And if someone comes along and says, I can turn that on for you this afternoon, all I need is a credit card number, of course you're going to start to get very interested in that. When the reality is, it isn't the technology; it was just the business process that changed, and you were a victim of your own business process, which inevitably had compliance and finance and other gatekeepers that were actually meant to ensure you stuck to your budget. Now you're hearing all sorts of stories about companies that have adopted the principles of cloud or acquired cloud services only to find that what they thought was going to cost X is actually costing 2X. In fact, that's one of the areas of simplicity that we decided very early on. We call it what you see is what you get pricing. And when a partner generates a quote from our system and gives it to a customer, we guarantee them that that's what they're going to pay. It doesn't
Hmm.
vary. There's not three, four, five hidden charges that no one can explain but are on the bill. It does, because that infuriates people, not because, not just because the cost is higher, but because they can't explain it to their own stakeholders. And
Correct.
fundamentally, these relationships that we have amongst our own coworkers and amongst our customers and vendors is one of trust. And we think that we've moved beyond the trust us, we're a smart cloud company to we understand your problem, trust us to deliver a solution that's going to be cost effective and you're going to know what you're going to pay. That
Hmm.
makes a huge difference. And it's one of those things where people need to understand that people's people shouldn't be buying cloud services alone. They should be buying outcomes that happen to be available on the cloud. And that's a big step for a lot of people to realize that the future is going to be, I've heard the word multi-cloud, I've heard the word poly-cloud, which I find yet another twist on the word cloud. Uh, but the idea is you're going to put your workload where it makes the most sense based on the capability of the service provider, not on how complex you want to make your environment.
So there are the two things I just want to would love for you to double click on. One of them is this whole because that in itself seems like an ingenious solution, right? Of billing, which is what you see is what you get. Take us through, like, how'd you go about? Because if everyone's doing something in a certain way and you've just gone ahead and done something in a different way, that clearly required somebody to have thought about it and then gone ahead and executed on it. How did that come about?
Well, it's a little embarrassing, but it's true. We started the business in 2013, January. First spent the first 5 months building out our initial infrastructure. First customer came on board in May, which was a great success. We presented our first invoice and they wouldn't pay it. You know why? Because they couldn't
Mm,
understand it. Because
mm,
when I went to market, the team that I had built, we decided we were going to mimic the merchandising clouds, the big hyper clouds at the time, who had all these various charges. It felt like we were truly merchandising, and in effect, you're duping your customer into believing they're paying less than what they are. But because we sold through channel partners, they don't want that level of sophistication. They want to know that an apple's an apple, an apple, whether it's a wholesale apple or a retail apple, it's the same thing. And so the hard lesson learned was we wouldn't get our bills paid if they weren't easy to understand. So adopting this what you see is what you get pricing was really a part an issue of survival. And secondly, what we realized was our channel partners can't make a clear how do I say this, a clear proposition to their customer if they have to feel like they have to ignore the 15% of the monthly invoice because they don't understand it, whether it's egress fees or IO fees. I mean, they're very clever. The merchandisers that are in this business are very clever in their packaging. But at the end of the day, enterprise customers want to know that the invoice is going to come in and match every month. And as soon as we went to that model, everyone started to say, okay, this is good. Now I can predict my cost. Clearly, if someone's consuming more storage over time, that's a very linear, predictable cost. It's when
Sure.
these hidden charges that they don't understand, and that really is made a difference. And what I marvel at is, 10 years later, it still makes a difference.
It
Like,
does.
and people care about it, and especially when you're doing. I've always said boring is beautiful. And you think about it, before COVID, you'd have people come through your office every night and empty out the trash can, and you never saw them. I mean, you could have worked late and maybe bumped into them once or twice, but the reality is you came in the morning, your trash can is empty, and every month you wrote a check and paid your bill. And that's a beautiful business because you got something of value for the money you paid, and the only time you ever got antsy about it was when the trash can wasn't empty. Well,
Hmm.
I like those sorts of businesses. It's a utility oriented business. You deliver it on time, and if you do your job well, no one actually has to know who you are unless they want to buy more of it. And instead of shouting from the rooftops, buy cloud, buy cloud. It's no, no. It's an outcome that people need to focus on.
So what are the outcomes that ThinkOn talks about in terms of if let's say you and I were having a conversation, how would you have that conversation?
Sure. Yeah. So as I said towards the beginning, we are data centric, and therefore
Hmm.
I'd say data savvy. So we have a portfolio of data protection services, but unlike our competitors who will pick one particular product and say, we're using this backup product and that's how we're going to win the market. Our view is we have no power to pick a winning product. We just have the power to deliver a winning service. So we actually work with multiple backup vendors to ensure that each of our channel partners can still work with their preference. So that's our backup services. And then we have an archiving portfolio, which is very much object storage oriented, and people know that they can get cost effective, high performance, middle of the road performance, and then ultra low cost cold storage, similar to what they would get with the hypercloud. But again, no Byzantine invoice that they can't understand at the end of the month. I mean, our invoice is virtually never more than a page long. And I'm
Mm.
told after 10 years, I'm told that still is a bit of an anomaly in the ecosystem because most invoices are still multiple pages.
Which
So
goes which goes back to your ethos of keep it simple,
that's right. Yeah. And on the
right?
compute side, we keep it really simple. We have two portfolio products. We have a multi-tenanted cloud, which is unique in that people buy resources in bulk. So people buy storage and they buy RAM and they buy processors. That's it. And they can assemble it any way they want. Just like three Lego blocks can be used to build anything you want. And then we have a private cloud offering, which is really the next level of privacy where customers are like, I don't want to be involved in worrying about my noisy neighbor, the impact on my infrastructure. Just build me a private cloud so I feel more comfortable using it. But they get to say they're on the cloud. They get to consume resources in a model that fits their consumption patterns that they're looking for. And that's it. Beyond that, everything else we do is really just a corner case to satisfy a particular need where a partner has said, we need to deliver this thing, and we'll do it. Otherwise, it doesn't really get beyond those stories.
Cool. Um, Craig, I know you're on the Council of Canadian Innovators as well, and so whether you reach into ThinkOn or you reach into your experience there, um, would love to get your take because if you and it says it right here, it say hi to the future, where hi stands for human ingenuity, um, and and the conversation that we have is a lot of people they get so caught on with technology that they forget the human side of ingenuity in a lot of ways. And yes, computers are going to do a lot of stuff, and yes, AI is going to take on a lot of stuff. Totally get that. But if we continue to be our evangelical conversation is if we continue to be humans, nothing can replace us, right? And
Right.
and so how do we do that? And so with that in mind, um, take me through like what's your take on human ingenuity? How do you foster it within your organization, and how do you support the community uh, with that effort? And I think candor could be one example there, but there could be many others.
Yeah. So let's take on all three of those questions. So first things first, the only way we can find inspiration to innovate is by having a close relationship with someone with a problem. We're not mind readers, so we try to spend time talking to people with problems so that we can understand how can we address it in a way that, you know, demonstrably improves that particular customer's uh, issues or deals with the issues. So that's the first thing. And to really empower our people, we run, I think, a very flat organization. We're constantly pushing things down to the organization. As a CEO, I was very hands-on product leadership for a long time because I wanted to listen to what people were saying so then we could foster the right sort of innovation there. Now we've got a really robust product team that's spending a lot of time doing the same thing, but fundamentally we bring engineering, operations, and product management together to deliver a product that the customer wants. In an area where I'll use Canador as an example, like I'm really impressed with what they're doing in North Bay, but also what we've been able to do together. We started a relationship, I'm going to say almost 4 years ago now. And our challenge was how do we find a reliable supply of talent to fuel
Hmm.
our own growth? And what we did there was we agreed to collaborate. They actually developed a cybersecurity program that launched last fall, and for which the students that are in that program are encouraged to come and work for us, join our company either during the school year part time or during summer or whenever it makes sense for them, because we provide phenomenal on job training, if you will, and experiences. Which at the end of the day, as a country, we need experienced, well trained cybersecurity professionals. There is no way we have an oversupply of those people, and we chose Canador, A, because the leadership there was thinking the right way, and I really can't say enough about the leadership. But I also, we needed to have these ability to have these conversations about how to innovate the program and not feel like we were competing with also foreign interests. And unfortunately, a lot of universities pander to offshore uh, programs for funding and those sorts of things. And I just didn't want to be that company that was fighting for mind share with a professor because he or she is also trying to do something with a company in California. I wanted to have a relationship where we could actually do things together and innovate together. And that's been a really important step for us. And now, what we're seeing with our collaboration with First Nations, which is a natural, I wouldn't say a byproduct, a natural product of working in North Bay. That's been
Yeah.
another area for us. And what's I find most interesting about all this is as we become more well known, more organizations want to actually come and collaborate with us because they know that we have a reputation for being open collaborators as opposed to sucking profits out of the country, which is really what others try to do. And that's what really one of the things that makes us different.
And that's beautiful. So for the benefit of our listeners, and some of them are educators, right? I think it would be just amazing if you could give us some nuts and bolts of what the arrangement, if that's something you can talk about. What's
Sure.
the arrangement like? Do the students come in as a co-op program? How does that
Yeah.
relationship work?
Well, it's so the way the students join us is still, I would say, pliable and flexible. So because it's the first year of the program, so we're trying to find the right model there. But I think the important part is where both parties to the arrangement are being flexible and malleable in how we make it work. But we've gone an extra step in that we have actually built out our global security operations center in on the campus in one of their
Mm,
buildings. So it's actually
okay.
right there. And we built it to government standards that are, RCMP standards so that we can achieve the accreditations that we ultimately need in order to deliver our services to the federal government, which is a key part of our business. But we've really looked at it holistically and said, if we're going to be all in on North Bay and on Canadore, let's be all in on the campus, so that it actually becomes part of the experience. And on top of that, we've started a program now where we're off. Some of our employees have relocated to North Bay. We've had multiple employees pick up and move from Toronto or other places and move to North Bay. It's a wonderful place. Quality of living is phenomenal. Cost of living is great, and it's going to become one of our centers of excellence. And cybersecurity is such a rich topic that even students that go through that program who choose to go and work in the private sector, go work in the public sector, and not with us, they'll still be great ambassadors for our business because we were
That is
supportive of them.
that is so good. But take me to the time when the idea was taking birth. So, was this just something that came about serendipitously, or was there a push, or was there an instigate? Like, just it
Fair
seems like a
question.
great idea. I just
Yeah.
don't understand why more people don't do it, and therefore tell us how it got about.
I can't. I honestly can't remember. He would be embarrassed to hear me say that, or he would be embarrassed for me that I can't remember who was the person that introduced me to the president of Canada or George, but George would probably remember. But I was lamenting about my inability to get a relationship off the ground with a post-secondary education institution in the Greater Toronto area. I was just lamenting that. And we had done some research and we came to the conclusion there was a Goldilocks zone around Toronto that was far enough away from Toronto that people couldn't commute, but close enough to Toronto that people were still wanting to be in the industry, so to speak. And that Goldilocks zone encompassed Kingston, North Bay, and then down through the Sarnia area. And
Hmm.
we looked at what towns, what cities had university and college programs. So that more or less went, distilled it down to North Bay because they have Nipissing University there as well, which ironically enough shares campus space with Canadore. So that's wonderful because then you can actually dialogue with both administrations. And
Sure.
in the case of Kingston, both college and university. But then we started doing some more research, and this was the actual aha moment for me. In Kingston, students that graduate, the vast majority of them leave Kingston when they graduate. They had no intentions of staying in Kingston after they graduated. When I went up to North Bay the first time and started getting an introduction to the faculty and the administration up there, especially George and Sean, and I had time with students. What I was amazed by, I remember going into a classroom with a first year software developer program, and I just surveyed them informally. I said, "Show of hands, how many people want to stay in North Bay after they graduate?" And I think it was 80% of the hands went up.
Wow.
Now, so that tells me, okay, this is a great city with great potential, and the people that are here going to school actually see this city as potentially part of their future. Uh, so that's actually really exciting, I think, and
It
that was what
is. It is
kickstarted
very
the whole
exciting.
conversation, right? Because now I felt confident that we weren't going to just be a mill of talent that would immediately leave and go to work for a multinational. Some will, and God bless them. They should. That's part of what makes Canada an amazing country. But to be able to provide a a continuation through education into a productive workforce, I think was really what attracted me to them. And then just as we started talking more and realizing there was all this common uh, opinion about how things should be done, the value of the community, the tie-ins to the different approaches to education. It just made sense for us, and the partnership has been great. And I think our SOC is it's furnished now. I know we're actually moving employees in there now, so this is real time activity. And then what we're going to start to notice too, though, is there'll be innovation coming out of that because one of the things that we're really committed to is giving our employees opportunities to be creative, not in the context of being cavalier, because that's a dangerous
Hmm.
form of creativity, but in the
Hmm.
context of here's some problems. Why don't you try to solve them? And when you solve them, maybe we can make those solutions part of our normal approach, especially in cybersecurity. So, like one of the things that we've done there is we've partnered with a company called Cyber Ranges, and they've put in a cyber range, or in the process of putting one in. So, which is really I call it the flight simulator for cybersecurity. They probably
Hmm.
would cringe to hear me say that, but I love the idea of giving students and even full-time employees access to a range where they can actually improve their cyber attack deterrent skills, those sorts of things.
Very cool. We've heard enough on ThinkOn. We've heard some things about what you're doing within, not just in the company, but also outside. I want to switch gears a bit and get this a bit more on Craig personally. So, you've had quite a career, right? And this is not
Yeah,
your first rodeo, right?
right.
And it's been fantastic. I'm sure there have been ups and downs, and I'm sure, like any entrepreneur, you've had some successes and some where you've learned a ton. Um, give us a bit of a thought in terms of, was this always the path that you had chosen, or was it
Hmm.
just you were exploring and stuff just started happening in a good way? But if you were to take this path all over again, would you do it differently?
First of all, I don't think I would do it differently, only because I think that the route I've taken has had, it's been good for my mind. I first noticed the data challenge in the mid '90s when I worked for a company called Storage Tech, which was,
Mm-hmm.
synonymous with long-term data storage, primarily tape media, but still long-term data storage. And I realized then and there that the data was already a problem, and I'm fascinated by problems. And I remember working on different opportunities early in my career at Storage Tech, and then I had an epiphany. I'd had a laptop stolen out of my vehicle, and I realized that I worked for a backup company that didn't back up my laptop. And so I started looking around. I found a company in Calgary, Alberta that was really innovating in the area of laptop backup. And then, I just finished my MBA, and I started seeing all these ways you could build new business models around as a service. This is long before the cloud, long before as a service became popular. But I just saw this opportunity, and then it's just gone through various iterations of my career. But it's always been about data. It's always been about as a service. And what I find now is I'm seeing even more and more forms of data, whether it's the way police are now wearing body worn cameras, and that data has very specific needs, or data that's been sitting in boxes for 10 years. And now with AI, people are saying, boy, I'd love to be able to analyze the data sitting in boxes. And okay, how do we digitize that?
Mm-hmm.
It's still just another problem, but the end result is it's always about the data for me. And I look at this AI space and I think, if I was going to do it all over again, would I go into that space? And I realized, no, I'd actually still rather serve the data for the folks that are actually focusing on AI, because the
Mm.
data has some unique characteristics.
And picks and travels is always a great place to be, right? As compared
Always.
to being on the mainstream area, and I think this is
Yep.
this is fantastic. Thank you for that. I would also be remiss if because one of the things that I remember very well, and Chris has been saying this on multitude of occasions, which is some of the people whom you worked with or you did work with in the past are still in some shape or form come back and work with you. So um, what's the secret sauce of you being such an amazing magnet?
Well, I don't know about amazing, and yeah, magnet maybe. Yeah. Um, you know, I grew up on a dead end gravel road, and I had an amazing childhood. Like, we all take things away from our childhood, but one of the things I just like, I spent a lot of time alone, and I spend a lot of time thinking about things. So I try to be somewhat cerebral in the way I look at things, and I try to stay very calm. I'm a firm believer that in my role, regardless of whether I'm coaching a baseball team of 12-year-olds or a CEO of a 200-person company, there is no benefit to the CEO having his hair on fire, because calmness is what really keeps people comfortable. Because as I tell people all the time, we are not solving world hunger here. I would love it if
That's
some of
right.
our customers were doing that, but that's not what we're going to be known for. But what we can be known for is providing an environment where people feel like they can accomplish what they need to do. Yes, there are moments of crazy times here. But it's at the end of the day, I try to always bring it back to being calm and trying to be clear. So I get hung up on the words clean versus clear. Lots of people try to communicate cleanly, and I prefer to communicate clearly about what we're trying to do, because that way people understand what it is we're trying to do. And by the way, the feedback I get internally is, hey, you're not communicating enough. You're not communicating enough. You got to do more of that. So it's not like we have reached a point of perfection. We haven't. But I will say that for me, I'm always trying to find ways to instill calmness, from which comes confidence, and people come back to us. So even people that have worked for us and that have left, I still have a great dialogue with most of them. My view is they're all ambassadors. We spend a lot of time on the way in. We do something called a group interview process, where anyone that comes into the company spends at least an hour to an hour and a half with a group of their future peers, only trying to figure out whether they're a good fit culturally. And that's a two-way street, because we've had people go through those interviews and say, wow, you know what? I can't handle this level of inspection, or I can't handle this level of intimacy. And that's okay. That is completely
Yeah,
okay, right? What we
yeah, yeah,
can't
yeah.
have is people feeling like either they misled us or we misled them on, what it's like to work here. So I'm really proud of the fact that, we've got people who have been here. We have some people who have been here almost as long as I've been here, uh, which is crazy, right? But it's true. And I'm really excited whenever I have it. We do our monthly town halls and we go through our anniversaries, and I look at 8 years, 9 years, 7 years, 6 years. We've got some people that work here who their spouse also works here, which is ultimately that is the consummate testament to your culture.
That's right.
When you feel strongly enough to refer your spouse to the same place. And like I said, it's not perfect, but what I do promise people is our hair will not be on fire for very many days compared to lots of places where there's lots of drama. And most people know this about me. I have the absolute worst feeling I have is when I encounter drama. It just doesn't work for me. So we try very hard to. And when I say we, I mean the collective leadership team here at ThinkOn. Drama is not part of our equation.
On that, that's a perfect place to wrap this up. Our time's come to an end, but what I've taken away is you've stuck to data. It has formed different paths along the way. It used to be on tape once upon a time, and now it just sits on the cloud. And there are different ways of serving that, so that's fantastic. I love your Think On It initiative with Canador. I think setting, and it's not just a from how I've now understood it, which I didn't in the past, which is it's not a program. It is you cohabiting with them, and that's absolutely fantastic. And then you know what? We can leave the drama at the door. I don't think we need to have drama all the time.
Agreed.
With that, thanks a lot, Craig, for taking the time, sharing your insights. Our listeners would love to hear from you. So what we will do is we tag you and we'll tag ThinkOn on the show notes.
Sure.
And this has been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure as well. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for the great questions.
The Say Hi to the Future podcast series is produced by Sonia Romero, edited by Matt Miller, and special effects by Edward Vasquez. Please leave us your thoughts and let us know if there's a guest you want us to have a conversation with. You can find all Say Hi to the Future podcast series on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.